back here at the Hall of History, continuing our look at World War II. And in this episode, we're going to look at the early war in Europe and North Africa. This picture here on the cover here, if you will, is of General Erwin Rommel, more famously known as the Desert Fox, and he led the Africa Corps in World War II. He actually started his rise to prominence as the German army rolled through France in 1940 and through Belgium, the whole idea of blitzkrieg and the use of mechanized forces. Well, we'll do a short look at the Battle of the Atlantic. Well, what started happening was sinking U.S. ships, and as you can read this, many Allied ships were sunk in the Atlantic Ocean. Most of these were done by U-boats. Others also, some were surface to surface and some were by planes, but the vast majority were U-boats. The Allies responded by forming convoys. We'll look at that in a couple seconds here. And also by the use of radar. Radar was a brand new invention, and radar helped the British win the Battle of Britain also. Here's your typical convoy diagram. You can see, it pretty much speaks for itself. These are very large formations, and these convoy escorts would patrol the perimeters, and you can see the most of the merchant marine, the raw material ships, ships carrying cargo and so forth, who were very lightly armed, would stay in the middle. And once these convoys started to take shape, the amount of tonnage lost by the Allies dropped dramatically. The Battle of Britain really did not involve the U.S. This was after the Nazis, the Germans, ran through France and the lowlands, Holland, Belgium, and so forth. Hitler wanted to invade Great Britain itself, but he was talked out of an invasion by Goring. Goring, the head of the Luftwaffe, or the German Air Force, thought they could really just bomb Great Britain into submission. And Great Britain, London, the area was a bomb this time. People would go into the subways, the tunnels for bomb shelters. There have been many movies out there during this time period. And it was really the British Royal Air Force that really stemmed the tide. These pilots in their Hurricanes and their Spitfires, and these are the planes on the right, turned the tide. These were very nimble aircraft fighters, and they almost single-handedly destroyed the German Air Force. Winston Churchill said, "Never was so much owed by so many to so few," and what he meant here by the pilots of the Royal Air Force turning back the tide of the bombers. Those are Heinkel bombers on the left there. Those are the main bomber that Germany used during this time. The other battle was for North Africa, and the United States did get involved in this. And as you look at North Africa, Italy wanted to expand their empire. They wanted to get along with the Germans, and also the Germans wanted to get in North Africa and kick the British out, because the British were in Egypt, and Egypt was a gateway of the Suez Canal, and Egypt was also the gateway to the oil-rich fields of Saudi Arabia and the Arabian Peninsula. So this kind of goes back to our whole idea about how petroleum has influenced world politics and in the military, since the turn of the century. Well, Operation Torch was an invasion of Axis-controlled North Africa, and in a nutshell, this was the troops under Dwight David Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, and they forced the surrender of General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, to surrender. This was important because from here, the Allies could launch an attack on Italy and open a second front in Europe. England wanted a second front in Europe. They wanted to take some of the pressure off, with Germany being right across the English Channel, and they wanted some pressure taken off there. They wanted the United States to get in and help with that. And this picture of the Desert Fox out in the in North Africa, but with one of his officers. An interesting part of Operation Torch. This was the first time U.S. troops were involved in combat, and you're looking at in 1943ish here. And the first battle, major battle, United States troops got into with the Germans was a place called the Kasserine Pass. And the first battle, the United States troops were mauled pretty badly by the German forces. Well, at this point, there was a big shakeup in the command structure and how troops were put together and the training. And the person who started making their claim to fame during this time and was brought in to really get the American troops under control and to improve their fighting efficiency was General George S. Patton. And that is the picture on the right. Patton has been said to be one of the most tactical geniuses the United States has ever produced militarily. He was not without his faults, and we'll look at General Patton a little bit later. But once General Patton got in there, he pretty much shaped the troops up, and a few days later they met the Germans again in the same area of the Kasserine Pass, and they defeated them. And that pretty much spelled the end of the German occupation of North Africa. On the European front, the battle for Stalingrad. Now, we learned earlier that the Germans and the Russians made a pact. Well, that only lasted so long. Germany wanted more land, and they weren't going to get it going to the west very easily, and so they went in and invaded the Soviet Union. Originally, the invasion of the Soviet Union went well, but at a turning point with the invasion of the Soviet Union was the battle for Stalingrad. And you can read this for yourself, but it was a very, very involved battle, and the Germans really more or less defeated by the weather itself. Very cold weather, and the troops are freezing. They didn't have their supplies and so forth, and the whole German army surrendered that was there. And it's a very much talked about, been movies about this battle. And again, want to do some more research on it, I would highly recommend it. You can read here that the Soviets lost 1.25 million soldiers and civilians. And the one thing the Soviets did have that the Germans did not was just pure manpower. They could just keep throwing soldiers at the Germans, and eventually they're going to get overrun. At the Battle of Stalingrad, once the Germans retreated here, that was pretty much the furthest advance east of the German army, and at this point the Russians started getting the upper hand and beginning to push the Germans back into the German homeland. During this time also, there were some large, big-time scale tank battles. And there's a picture of a Panzer Kampfwagen 3, one of the German battle tanks. The Russian T-40 came in at this time. And some of these tank battles, there were thousands of tanks on these open steppes of Russia. And especially the Battle of Kursk and just some of the great battles of armored and mechanized units in World War II.